Let's get started with an update on the fiscal 2019 budget process. Where do we stand after the March meeting?
So our budget process generally runs from the end of February until budget adoption at the end of April. So we are right in the middle of it. We've got 11 budget work sessions, which we're engaged in the thick of right now. These are opportunities for board members to get deep in the weeds of the budget, ask staff questions. This year, there are cuts on the table. Commercial real estate assessments came in lower than what we had anticipated, which meant that we had to find sources to cut from the budget. So that means board members are bringing an added level of scrutiny to make sure that we really do understand not only where those cuts might fall in terms of line items, but the potential impacts that they might have to our residents.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the work sessions. They've been going on as we speak, pretty much,
That's
with
right.
every individual department throughout the county. Have you found anything that's been surprising?
That's an interesting question. One of the things that's been really striking, I think, not necessarily tied to the work sessions, but in terms of the public communications we've had with folks, is, well, perhaps it's not surprising how much Arlingtonians have a passion for the programs that they enjoy. But, you know, this is a budget where our manager and the department heads took great care to make sure that cuts really didn't reduce the services. But one of the things that's been surprising is even if the impacts to the residents there aren't felt impacts to the residents, people are still very protective of their services. A great example is the 55+ program, which presents an opportunity for those who participate in parks and recreation programs, our seniors, to go far and wide around the region and go on field trips and day trips. One of the budgetary impacts or elements is to contract out the bus services. It won't affect the number of programs, it won't affect the cost to residents, but people feel really attached to that program. They feel attached to the driver of that bus. And so we've really heard from a lot of
continuing,
exactly.
But yes.
So we've heard from a lot of people in that regard. And so I think while I'm not surprised by the passion, the level of protectiveness I think has been really striking.
Yeah. Actually, to me, that's not as striking because I'm kind of used to it. I was going to say, this is my 23rd budget, but if you count the school board. But I actually have been somewhat surprised at there hasn't been more outcry about programs. And I think as you set it up, it's because they took really great care in making cut. There wasn't a meat axe approach. It was really very careful trying to protect the services and its effect on our residents as much as possible. And I think that's paying off. I think it's paying off.
Well, I know we've had a lot of opportunities from the public, different ways for them to engage in the process, more so than we've had in previous years, via social media, via chats, via coming to the board meetings, but
Open
so
Door
many,
Monday.
so many different things. Are you seeing a wider variety of feedback as a result of that kind of thing?
You know what I think has been striking this year with the roundtables, the huge number of people participating in Open Door Mondays, and then I think what we'll experience at the hearing on April 3rd at 7 p.m., if people would like to come in for the budget hearing, is there's more cross-fertilization and more conversation happening. I think in the past, when we've done a lot of online engagement or letter writing engagement, you focus on the issue that matters to you. And I think it's incredibly salient for public safety personnel, for example, to be in a room when somebody maybe has come to advocate about Arlington Independent Media or the Shredder, for them to also hear the concerns of our public safety personnel who are raising to our attention that their compensation maybe isn't keeping pace with the region and therefore creating large number of vacancies among their ranks. So there's this sort of opportunity for folks to hear from one another about their priorities. Although I think we always wish we were in a budget year where everything was expanding and growing.
Sure.
That nevertheless has been one of the positives, I think, coming out of some of these new engagement opportunities for people to hear how different offsets and different programs affect different members of the community.
Yeah, and I might jump in here. One of the things our manager did, which more so than in the past, I think, is he did a little foreshadowing for the future. So if you read the manager's note, which he did spend a lot of time on, so this is not an easy budget year. We always say they're hard, but this one really kind of is. But I think we've been approaching it very well. Next year's going to be harder. I think we're going to have some really difficult conversations, and we're kind of foreshadowing, talking about that. So this engagement now is really good, but we're going to have to step it up. And so when we're done with this budget, we're not going to just like sit back and go, we can relax until next fall. I think we're going to start having
time to start then talking about the next year.
Yeah, because I think we're going to have to do some real, there are too many perfect storms coming together. And Katie, you mentioned the, what we're facing is the decline in the value of the commercial real estate, and that is what's happening in the office market nationwide. And we're starting to realize that's not going to come back. So while we've always been based on a 50-50, 50% with our houses, our residents who live here, and 50% of the commercial, the businesses, and that's been a nice balance. That's probably going to change, and more of the burden is going to have to fall on our
residential.
on residential for a while. So we have some there are going to be some real conversations coming forward, but I think we're going to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about how the manager presents the budget to all of you. You go through the hearing process and the analysis. How much leeway does the board have, just to give folks a little context, to make changes to what the manager has proposed, to change a whole program or what have you that's on the table?
That's a great question, Kara. So we have set the box. We act pretty soon to advertise a tax rate, which we did last month in March. Within that, as long as we find offsets for any ads, we can really start from scratch with this budget. I think people generally don't see us do that, in part because we respect the professional expertise of the manager and staff.
Wouldn't be wise.
It probably wouldn't be wise.
Wouldn't be wise.
But it is our job to channel the community's priorities. And what might be most cost effective, for example, may sometimes come in a conflict with what the community might value. The manager often takes a hard look, and we appreciate this very much, at other jurisdictions, right, benchmarking us. There are some ways in which Arlington wants to be in line with fellow jurisdictions. Public safety pay is a great example. When we're not in line, that has consequences. Yeah. But there are some others. There may be programs, legacy programs, that are unique, that have a huge number of people who champion and love them in Arlington, and that way we might be interested in being different from other jurisdictions, and that's possibly where the board comes in. Yeah,
and I think we're having that discussion particularly with AIM, and then if I can just, a small example, and I don't know where we're going to end up, or even quite where I'm going to end up yet, the shredder. The shredder is a very small amount of money, and our staff did some look at more people in Arlington by just, multiples come and use that. And I realize, I think in part, it's more than just a shredder. And we need to kind of think about that. It's some of the things that make Arlington the community it is. It's people get together and they talk about standing in line, but I think actually people kind of like to visit with each other to some extent. So that's something I think we need to look at. It's not a lot of money, and it may be providing some benefits that go way beyond shredding. Is what I was trying to say on that.
It becomes a community event.
Yeah,
almost.
Perhaps. So that's an interesting one, which I haven't finished looking at, but it's really interesting.
Now, we were talking about, the transparency, the engagement with the community. Is this something that's unique to Arlington, or is this something we see in other communities to the level that we do it?
What a good question. None of us have been county board members in other communities. Yeah. I think, especially we look at our peer jurisdictions in Northern Virginia, and we all have an opportunity to interact with our counterparts in Loudoun and Fairfax and Alexandria and beyond. This is an incredibly highly educated population that has very high expectations of their government. So I don't know that we're any more or less than any other jurisdiction, but, I would say, especially when it comes to the budget, I really do think that I can honestly look Arlingtonians in the eye and say that this is an incredibly transparent process. Yeah, right. All of our deliberations are broadcast with closed captioning. They are available and preserved, so people can go back and look at them online. budget.arlingtonva.us. You can see all of them there. We strive to be out in the community and hearing from people and provide many opportunities for folks to weigh in. Yeah. It's really important to us that people feel like this is their budget too. Right. And although we cannot meet everybody's requests and satisfy every need, we do want everyone who participates to feel heard and respected. Yeah, because that's who we're representing. That's who we work for. Exactly. And I would say, because I've been at this sort of a long time and have done some national conferences, I think we do far more than most places. Sometimes we've gone, and I've described, on the school side, it's ACI, and here we have all of our commissions. A lot of times people are just like, what? Wow. And that really helps, so that they just find themselves running into problems because they really don't have that kind of way for people to do inputs. And I was told, I don't know if it's apocryphal, but one of our staff who was in Fairfax one time when we were doing boundary changes, which we do a lot of, said, we just get a letter in the mail saying where our kids are going to school the next day. There's no process. And there's no process. And I was like, whoa. So I don't know if that's exactly how they do it, but I think we probably do far more, really probably in every department. Not to say we're perfect, we can't get better, because we're not sort of bragging. Yeah, but I do think we do more than a lot of places. And I think the level of engagement from the community, you referenced this earlier, that our community is very
invested personally in all of the details.
Well, this is
of
an
the budget
educated
process.
community, and actually, you think about it. Think of all the people who have government jobs.
Absolutely.
So this is what we do.
This is what they do
For a living.
Yes, yes. So they totally understand how this works, and they want to be part of it, and I think that's great. It gets a little bumpy sometimes. But
Yeah.
it's great.
Well, and then speaking of, you mentioned the hearing on April 3rd. Are there additional opportunities for folks to let their voices be heard before the April meeting when the budget will be adopted?
Absolutely. So we have a budget hearing on April 3rd at 7 p.m. in the boardroom, and then we have a tax rate hearing on April 5th at the same time, 7 p.m., 2 nights later. People generally, especially when you're looking at having to make cuts, we tend to hear more from people about what they'd like to save or add. We know there are a lot of Arlingtonians who might like to come and make the case that their property taxes should be lower. And so we provide a forum for people to make that case as well on April 5th at 7 p.m. You can continue to go again, budget.arlingtonva.us, find a number of online forums. You'll find also there our email addresses as board members. You're welcome to write us. We've been receiving a great many emails on the budget. We'd read all of them and strive to follow up to the extent that we can. Open Door Mondays will remain through the budget process. If you go to arlingtonva.us and search Open Door, you'll find the list of dates. And we look forward to continuing to engage with people right up until we adopt a budget on April 22nd.
And then, as I said,
Oh, excuse me, April
afterwards,
21st.
21st, yes.
Yeah. And then we'll be
Don't come to the
engaging
boardroom
afterwards.
on April 22nd. We will not be.
Well,
You'll be
you can come,
lonely.
but you won't find much.